Welcome to the Brand Intelligence Podcast, the show where we pull back the curtain on some of the world's smartest brands. I'm your co-host, William Tyree, and today we're diving into the world of AI as it applies to brand and legal compliance. We'll be hearing from two of my close colleagues here at IntelligenceBank, Tessa Court and Mark Wood. Welcome to Brand Intelligence.
Great, thanks. We're so happy to be here.
I'm really excited.
Now, before we dive in, we like to ask guests to give us a theme song. If you were walking out on stage today to give a keynote address, what would that song be and why? And Tessa, I've asked you this in the past, but I'm going to give you a chance to either double down on your past answer or change your answer.
I do
What's
need
yours?
to double down. I am a loyalist at heart, and it would definitely be Proud Mary. So that is the best song to sing karaoke to. So I think if I did have a song, I would need to be singing at the same time. So that would be it.
I have to ask, since we're doubling down, who does your favorite version of Proud Mary?
Oh, Tina, of course.
Tina. All
Mm.
right. All right.
That was a quick
Good
answer,
stuff.
President.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, Mark, what about you?
It would have to be Pharrell Williams with Happy. It just,
Nice.
for me, any event, presentation, or otherwise, you start with that is going to be a great one.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
Be a great one.
That's amazing. That song has a lot of great kind of organic percussion in it too. I love that. I love the levity in it. All right, maybe we can hire a DJ to do a little mashup of those two songs and get going for the next keynote. Tessa and Mark, this conversation comes at an exciting time for both of you. This week, IntelligenceBank announced its acquisition of RedMarker. The two companies have been working together for some time, and Tessa, I'd like to start with you and ask, why is this the right time to formalize the partnership and bring AI content compliance to IntelligenceBank?
Yeah, sure. So Intelligence Bank, and I guess our value proposition has always been around if marketing and compliance had a love child, you get Intelligence Bank as the marketing operating system of record. And that's how we always thought about it. And over time, we had some shared clients with RedMarker, and RedMarker specializing, going very deep in terms of AI-driven marketing compliance. And then obviously with Intelligence Bank, our DAM brand hub and marketing operations platform to help clients get approved content out the door quickly. We did have a shared client who said, gosh, it'd be really great if you brought these two things together because we see them hand in hand. That was about 3 years ago. And since then, we've had a very close partnership with RedMarker. We do have shared clients, and it just made sense to merge the companies literally last Friday. So we're very excited about two capabilities coming together because they're highly complementary. And for our clients that are larger in regulated industries, we're able to provide them with literally the best compliance checking capability in the world based on these custom rules that they're able to set up. And likewise, for our other clients, there will be opportunities for looking at things like brand checking and spell check and other things during the approval process that can be a little bit lighter weight than just the heavier rules engine. There's also a lot of synergies as well in terms of web reporting. So we have a product that a lot of our clients love, whereby we have review processes for web pages. Once you produce a piece of content and it's out there in the world, how do you ensure you have a process to check it? And so we call this our content collateral tracker. And the RedMarker capability to index and to find proactively website risks that shouldn't be there is a really nice fit also with that product. So I guess in terms of how M&A goes and bringing companies and people together, it is literally the best fit I could imagine for our customers.
Let's frame the conversation a little bit. So, a Gartner Tech CEO Insights report shows adoption rates for AI and Gen AI across verticals. To nobody's surprise, 75% of CIOs plan to increase AI investments. But what's really interesting is actually the industries highlighted. So the survey finds that the verticals with the most aggressive spending are banking, insurance, healthcare, transportation, all regulated industries, right? So we're all familiar with what companies are doing with AI, ranging from enhanced data analytics to helping with forecasting to increasing worker productivity. But I think one of the under the radar stories is how companies are using AI to improve legal and brand compliance. Fortunately, we've got a couple of experts here So I'd love to start with marketing compliance as it relates to laws and regulations. We're going to get into brand compliance a bit later. So, Mark, I think everybody has heard the SEC's marketing rule, right? That has been recently updated. We've all seen a lot of news surrounding that, some pretty hefty fines, lots and lots of warnings. But the truth is, there's agencies worldwide, right, devoted to consumer protection, including some you've never even think of. You've been offering AI content compliance in regulated industries for years. So, can you tell me a little bit about what content compliance entails? What does it look like for companies who aren't using AI yet? And then maybe after that,
Mm.
we'll get into what does it look like once they start actually leveraging the AI?
Yeah. Great insights, William. I think for me, stepping back before the process, it's that challenge that companies are facing. They're having more and more regulation, and then they're having higher and higher expectations from their stakeholders of compliance with those regulations. Social media makes the voice of one so much more powerful now. So you do something wrong, everybody knows about it. And so that increasing focus and the increasing cost of making mistakes, I think is a trend that all of those regulated industries you talked about would be facing. And if you look at current content compliance and the processes that most organizations have, there are some which are great and there are some which are not so great. They probably have three key themes that are similar across those organizations. One is it's normally a manual process. You have legal and compliance teams who have to review the content for brand compliance, legal compliance, and regulatory compliance. And that requires a significant effort from people. And then you have the theme of inconsistency. So you send your piece of marketing content to one lawyer, they give you one answer. You get a different lawyer the next day, you get a different answer. And so it can be subjective and inconsistent in terms of the content compliance and the feedback and guidance you're getting. And I think the final thing is that manual review and the inconsistency, it's really time consuming. So you get multiple reviews, you get back and forths between legal, compliance, marketing, brand, and you get a lot of delays in that. And so most of the organizations without an AI process or without an automated solution around content compliance, that's what they're experiencing. Manual review, inconsistent, and time consuming. If you step forward and look at those companies that have implemented a content compliance solution, they normally see three themes or three benefits that come out of it. One, it goes from a manual review to an automated review. Think of it like spell check. In the old days, when you had to correct a document and do the copy, you'd have to open the dictionary and find the word and check the spelling. Now that's automated. Similar to content compliance, you can automate that review. So it goes from a manual checking process to one that's automatically done. The second benefit or theme that you see in companies that use it is consistency. They get the same answer no matter who they talk to or no matter where it goes through the process. They get the same answer in terms of how do we manage the content compliance. And that's really important because especially for the marketers, one of their biggest frustrations is I talk to one person, I get one answer. I talk to another, I get another. Just tell me what the answer is and stick to it. And so it provides that consistency. And the final thing, which everybody enjoys, is improved content velocity. Get the content to market faster, less reviews, faster turnaround times. So that where we see those AI processes implemented around content compliance, you get the automated reviews, you get the consistency, and you get the improved content velocity.
That makes a lot of sense. First of all, that sounds really big. When you actually liken it to the spell check, that is just amazing to think that's a solution that most of us have had our entire life. And to think that something as intricate then and complex as regulatory compliance, that none of that has been automated until now is pretty amazing. But am I right in thinking that the future is here, right? There's a lot of companies already using this. And then I guess if so, what kind of hours are you seeing saved from a typical company that goes from a completely manual process to then using AI for this?
Yeah. So What we've seen, and there are different ways to slice the metrics, is content compliance review. The actual review of the piece of content can be up to 30 times faster because
Wow.
you're looking across things like disclaimers, disclosures, brand compliance. You have a range of things that you need to check in a piece of content. And when you can automate those checks, the review drops down significantly. We work with a client and we do look at content compliance for web report. So for websites. And with that, we've saved them over the last year and a half about 400 years of work in terms of reviewing that content for compliance. And so there's enormous savings to be made. There's a great case for a return on investment. But I think that there's one which is time saving, but I think in terms of amount of effort to review compliance, but those ones which you can't necessarily put a price or a value on, consistency and content velocity, getting it out there to market. There are those which are probably even bigger than the time saved.
When it comes to compliance checks, I think volume obviously matters. So, how much content are we talking about that these companies are getting out the door today?
Yeah, I think it depends on the organization. But if you take, let's say, a large bank, you're looking at between 20 and 100,000 pieces a quarter. To manually review that is insanely tedious and time consuming and expensive. What I love about Redmarker and Intelligence Bank coming together is that our customers are using Intelligence Bank for marketing compliance and getting approved content out the door quickly. And where Redmarker comes in is to automate that process with the brand and legal and compliance checks to automate. I think the 6 words no one ever wants to hear in a marketing department is I need to send this to legal. So if we can take out some of that administration and make that process faster, that is a win for everybody involved. And so CMOs sleep at night and heads of risk sleep at night together.
So, it seems so far a lot of companies had focused on ensuring that they have a formal, streamlined process for reviews in place. And that alone has had a ton of productivity enhancements and things like that across the board. So, Tessa, when somebody's already in a position where they have these processes streamlined, why do you think the time is right now to bring in AI for these compliance checks, given the other trends in the market that you're seeing?
Yeah. What I love about, I guess, the Red Marker AI compliance checking capability is that it's tangible AI that is solving a multi-million-dollar problem. There's a lot of AI out there. There's generative AI, and there's a lot of applications that marketers are using. But this is solving a huge problem that has real fines and real dollars attached to it. I think that when you're producing content at scale, so if you're producing 10 pieces of content a quarter, you probably don't need an AI compliance checker to see if it's on brand and if it's adhering to the regulatory frameworks for different industries. But when you're dealing with the volume, as Mark had just spoke about, it is physically impossible to see it all. And obviously, with generative AI, content is exploding. So more departments across an organization are actually creating the content, and they're creating it faster than ever before. But in certain industries, it needs to be checked in terms of the regulatory framework. And then for all industries, like everyone cares about brands. So regardless of what industry you're in, there's brand checks. Does it have the correct tone of voice? Are we using the right logo? Are the fonts readable from a accessibility perspective? So there are just ways that you can and use the AI to make content approval smarter and to remove a lot of the admin that goes into it.
I think Tessa,
It's
on
amazing.
that point, I was speaking with a client, which is a large fund manager based in New York, and they said to me, "I can't continue to manage my risk by growing my headcount to review content compliance." There, that's the problem they're faced with because of so much compliance, because they need to manage the risk and ensure compliance. The only way they can handle it at the moment without an AI compliance solution is with more headcount, more staff, more people. And that's, to your point, Tessa, the multi-million-dollar problem.
Things are happening over in Australia. The government recently warned social media influencers about the language in their endorsements. In the US, we have obviously the SEC levying fines for financial advisors for advertising hypothetical performance results in certain ways. So, how do you
Mhm.
implement a content compliance system to look for the right things on a company by company basis based on where they are, who might govern their industry, and so forth? How does it really work?
Yeah, and I think and we talked about it a couple of times today, that growth in regulation and that growth in compliance with expectation of compliance with regulation, legislations, and laws. And you're right, they're different in every market. And I think for us and what we do at Red Marker, over the years, we've learned a couple of things. One is that take retail banks in the United States, consumer banks. They're all covered by the same regulations and the same legislation and laws, but they each have a different approach to those regulations. And it normally fits into three different kind of ways of looking at it. One is each company has their own brands, products, and services, which are different and unique to them. And each company has their own interpretation of the legislation and regulations. Their compliance team, their legal team, they get great advice, but they have their own interpretation of how to comply with those regulations, which most of those laws and regulations are principle based. Don't be misleading. The legal teams and the compliance teams within those companies need to interpret it. What does don't be misleading? Then the final thing is their own risk appetite and how they choose to comply with that legislation and regulation. So if you have a neobank, a startup, they have one interpretation of the legislation and the risk they wanted to take with that. You have an old, established, large conservative bank. They have a very different approach to the same legislation and a very different risk appetite in that. And we've looked at those and the different ways that different companies interpret the legislation, their own brands and services, and their own risk appetite. And we've come up with a really efficient process through the Red Marker Client Success and Implementation team, where we work very quickly to understand that, but on a client by client basis, to implement what we call custom risk detection. And that custom risk detection meets those three things. It meets the brands, products, and services, it meets their interpretation, and it meets their risk appetite. And so we work with them quickly to implement that, and we get that live in the platform for them, and then the clients begin to use it. I think the next kind of layer from that is the legislation and regulations and products and services and risk appetite are constantly changing. And so this isn't a set and forget. This isn't build it once, build the house once, and you're done. You need to constantly be able to update and evolve those based on the changes that happen within that company and within the regulations of that company.
Let's talk a little bit about awareness. So, Mark, obviously, there's a fair number of companies that come to you and come to Intelligence Bank as well, looking for compliance solutions. But when your team reaches out to folks on legal teams, how much awareness is there that this type of solution is even possible?
Very little is what I'd say. It's back to the misquoted Henry Ford. If you ask customers what they wanted, they'd say a faster horse. There is a lack of awareness that there are solutions, or there is a solution in Red Marker that can solve this problem they have. And one of the things that I love when talking to clients is normally they say three things to me. They say, one, I have the problem that you solve, which we've talked about today, the too much content, the inconsistency, not fast enough turnaround time. I have that problem. The second thing they normally say is, I didn't know a solution existed that could solve that problem. And then the third thing they always say is, I really want to find out, how do I implement this within my organization? And so there is very little knowledge on it. We do see some driving factors in awareness and seeking out solutions in content compliance. And they normally come from an organizational focus, a company focus. It's either an AI focus. We need to be doing more things with AI, that some of the trends you've talked about. A productivity focus. We need to get the content out faster. Using platforms like IntelligenceBank, we've squeezed all of the fat out of the processes that we could, and we need to go further. They have resource constraints. They can't continue to grow their headcount. And then the final thing, they have that growth in marketing content, which is demanding that they do something different. So normally those kind of themes really drive clients to seek out content compliance solution.
So, when it comes to government use of AI, we've seen a real escalation over the last couple of years in particular, and it looks like a lot more is coming. So, in the UK, the Advertising Standards Authority kicked off a 5-year program called the AI Assist Collective Ad Regulation. So, last year, they monitored more than 3 million ads out in the world to help ensure consumers weren't being misled or otherwise harmed. In the US, nearly every federal agency is hiring AI experts, and many are already using it, including those that are in the business of ensuring consumer protection. So, the Department of Justice Attorney General said recently, just as we are upping our game when it comes to data analytics, we expect companies to do the same. I guess my question for either of you is it sure seems like governments are using AI to make sure that they can detect problems far more efficiently than ever before. We also talked about the huge escalation in ad buying and then content production as well. It seems like it's early days when it comes to the use of generative AI, but that's only going to accelerate things even further. Is how does this dynamic affect legal compliance teams?
Yeah, I think it's Mark can talk to this, but I think it's mostly around scale. It's the scalability of what we're talking about because
Mhm.
now you can produce content fast. The digital content explosion before generative AI, it was a huge problem. And that was really our value proposition to customers and how to rein in the cat and make this happen.
Mhm.
But with generative AI, it's added, I think, a whole other level of content volume that we are not
Mhm.
used to seeing. Also, the trend for personalization has done that. And so the regulators are being smart and are using technology to find the issues as they should be doing. And I think the reason why we did acquire the Red Marker product and team was to be able to offer this great capability to our customers. A really good example that we were discussing just yesterday was if you think about websites, there's a lot of content on websites. Some of it is accurate, a lot of it isn't, and none of it gets checked, usually on a very regular basis. And there's a lack of process. But as an example, you might be using, or a brand might be using an SEO company, a third party company that is using metadata and hidden keywords that don't even appear on the site that says, we guarantee you the best interest rate, and that is obviously a something that you should not be saying when you're offering that in a regulated industry. But that's where Red Marker comes in and can find the risks and the errors that you don't even see. And so I think that when the regulators are using technology to find these issues, that brands must also do the same to make sure they're on the same page. And in saying that, I always think brands want to do the right thing, right? Like they don't,
Yeah.
it's not that anybody's trying to skirt the regulation or the law or whatever it is, but it's more about having the capacity to manage the volume. And I think those are the two things that are really important.
Tessa, I think that one of the things that the implications for organizations is back to what I started with was the increased expectations of stakeholders of for organizations to comply with the regulations and legislations. And so that's both consumers, that's shareholders, and that's regulators. And the regulators using these tools means they can actually find non-compliant content easier and faster. And so the the comment that we expect companies to do the same and lift their game, that's what this is about. Before, you could put content out there, and because there weren't tools to find that content, if it was non-compliant, you could take the risk-based approach and say, "Oh, it was non-compliant, it's fine." Now the regulator can find them. And so if you're not matching, lifting your game and matching the technologies that regulators are using or their approaches that regulators are using, they will find the non-compliant content before you do. And so I think, we talk about content compliance is a preventative and a reactive. We do look at content compliance before it goes to market and do the automated AI compliance reviews. And so that preventing non-compliant content getting out there, that's the best case. And then we have the web risk reports where we can take in all of that web content and identify risk after the fact of content being in market. And I think I think that's where there's more risk for an organization because web content, when you put it out there, it may have been compliant at the time, but website content sits there for weeks, for months, for years. The regulations change, the expectations change. And so having a regular program to look at the current content compliance of those websites and those web pages is really important, especially when the regulator will be doing the same.
I think one of the things that I'd love to segue to here, if we could, is brand compliance. So, Tessa, this is something that you touched on earlier. Marketing leaders, brand leaders worldwide, they typically waste a lot of time, frankly, policing the usage of brand assets. I've been there myself many times. It's just when it comes to efficient asset distribution, it's just that's one area where a brand portal can help in terms of at least making sure that there's one place where everybody can get the right version, read the latest brand guidelines, and all take a stab at least at being compliant. How can AI content compliance help brand leaders as sort of an addition or add on to a brand portal service?
Yeah. So I think just to start with brand portals and brand hubs is when you refresh your style guide or you have a very robust set of brand guides that people use, is that there's a law of diminishing returns. So it starts out, everyone's enthusiastic, everyone's using the right template, the right logos, the right taglines, et cetera. And then over time, without a brand portal and without brand approval processes, that goes away pretty quickly. So the visual identity, tone of voice, images, and things like that can go off piste pretty quickly. The other thing is there's interpretation, especially when you're talking about brand values. You might say something is surprising and as a brand value, and how people interpret that visually can be very different things. And we have some pretty funny examples of what our clients have seen people consider surprising. And one was like, I think a donkey drinking wine. Like that was surprising, but it was totally off brand. So, in terms of using technology and AI to automate brand compliance, I think everybody would say in a company, it's important for brands to be visually consistent and also from a tone of voice and a strategy. And there's no doubt about that. And if you think about a brand temple or an architecture where the sum of the sub brands make up the whole, consistency is critically important. But it does dilute with the more people creating content. And obviously, if we're creating content at scale with Gen AI and others, it can dilute really quickly. So I guess first and foremost with our brand hub, our clients use that to not only explain the brand guidelines, to update them outside of a PDF. So it's a live, active platform that's shareable internally, externally, but also now with our red marker partners as well, we're able to augment the brand approvals with AI checking. So things like, did you use the right logo? Do you have the right size font? Sometimes in brand guidelines, you don't want to go under 8 point for readability and accessibility. Are we using the right colors? Are the colors and the fonts contrasting appropriately? So there's a lot of things that we can do in terms of checking for brand compliance, but with also not restricting creativity, because you don't want to be so strict that you lose ideas and you lose on brand interpretation of what you should be doing. By bringing that red marker brand checking within Intelligence Bank's approvals, we're able to give our brand management clients that assurity that we're automating that checking. And I think just lastly, to your point, nobody wants to be the brand police. Like we want to give teams the tools, the brand tools, and so they can make the right decisions and do the right thing. And I do have a firm belief is that most people want to be doing the right thing by their brand and by their companies.
I agree. I am similarly optimistic. So, Mark, having been in partnerships with in the past with companies with some fairly tricky brand guidelines like NVIDIA, hard one, all caps, title case, like what do you do there? Salesforce versus Salesforce.com, Hewlett Packard, things like that, and seeing brand managers manually police that. How can a solution like that help save them time when it comes to even looking at and detecting inconsistencies in brand style in your partnerships?
As Tessa mentioned, there's a number of things that we can automate in terms of that brand review. Is it a correct logo? Is it a legacy logo? Is the white space around the logo the correct size? Is it the correct font? Is it the correct font size, font color? Is there language in there that's not in line with the brand? Is there language that's missing that should be in there? And what it does is it automates those things that the machines do really well to give marketers and the content creators that feedback earlier in the process. And then it allows the experts in this area to do the things that humans do really well. Is this marketing, is this advertising in line with our brand from a holistic perspective? And so we think that it's important that it is actually a partnership of the technology and the expert reviewer with all of their skills to get the best outcome for the brand. So we automate the things we can automate and then give the expert reviewers and the experts in brand the time to actually consider how this piece of content will impact or enhance their brand.
So that's it for today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in to the Brand Intelligence Podcast. Please help us out by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. To listen to more episodes and to learn more about Intelligence Bank, visit us at intelligencebank.com.